Welcome to Nasdaq TradeTalks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us for this segment, we have Chad Anderson, SpaceX investor and managing partner of Space Capital, to discuss key findings from the first quarter 2023 Space Investment Quarterly, which measures private market equity investment activity and startup trends in the space economy from the investors that are on the forefront. Chad, it's great to see you as always. Welcome back to Trade Talks.
Hi, Jill. Good to see you.
You got it. And the venture markets continued its reset in the quarter. How did this impact space investment?
Well, broadly across tech, venture funding to startups fell by 50% year over year. So this is the lowest that it's been in 13 quarters, and this really directly affects what's happening in the space economy because venture capital dollars are make up the majority of funding to space companies in the space economy. VCs continue to be the primary source of capital. They made up 60% of the total investment in Q1 and 76% of all rounds. So they're a big player here. And so the overall venture market decline is affecting the space economy for sure.
Have you seen a bifurcation with the haves and have-nots as market mania has subsided?
Yeah, definitely. This market is tough. And to add to that, tourist investors have, mostly left the market, and VCs are increasingly reserving capital for companies that are built on strong fundamentals. So I'd say that this is really particularly apparent in launch. Of the 100 plus launch companies that have collectively raised over $27 billion over the last decade, there's only two that are operational. That's SpaceX and Rocket Lab. And so there are several aspirational launch companies that have had some real setbacks in Q1, and some others have made some progress. And so there was, obviously people are talking about Virgin Orbit. They had a launch failure, which ultimately led to the company filing for bankruptcy. But interesting for me is to see that ULA, the incumbent Lockheed Boeing joint venture, is reportedly up for sale. Meanwhile, SpaceX is having another successful quarter with return to flight of the Falcon Heavy, the launch of Crew 6 for NASA, and a Starship full wet dress rehearsal, a 33 Raptor engine static fire, and of course, the Starship just had a test flight a week ago. So.
We're going to get into that in just a moment here, but what is the new major phase of development that you're looking at?
Well, everything that we're talking about in the space economy is really enabled by SpaceX. And over the last decade or so. Before that, the market was very limited, as we talked about before. There was a handful of defense contractors on one side of the market, and the government as kind of the sole customer on the other. And so SpaceX really opened up the market, and by lowering the cost of accessing space, lowering the cost of launch, and bringing transparency to the market, that has enabled startups to enter the market for the first time. And now we've seen 1,700 space companies raise $270 billion over the last 10 years. And all of that is built on the Falcon 9 launch paradigm and the Falcon 9's capability. With Starship, SpaceX's next generation vehicle, we're entering a new launch paradigm. This is the largest vehicle ever built, the most powerful, and the lowest cost, which means that it's going to make some existing infrastructure obsolete. It is going to accelerate growth in existing markets, and it's going to enable entirely new markets that are kind of difficult for us to imagine today.
Why do investors need to understand why Starship's launch on April 20th was a success, and how will it impact phase 2 of the space economy? Of course, we understand that the headlines are going to be about the crash and so forth, but sometimes isn't this, especially in science, isn't this how you learn to get to the next phase?
Oh, you're exactly right. This was a test flight, and so the way that I've heard it described, which I really like, is that it was a successful failure. And what I mean by that is that, again, this is the largest, most powerful vehicle ever built, and we're testing it for the first time. It launched, it cleared the pad, it reached max Q, which is the highest, the most aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle, and it survived that. And it got 4 minutes of flight. So the company's going to have some really great data to go back and figure out exactly what worked and what didn't, and where to tweak things so they can be more successful in their next test launch.
Tell us about the launch of Fund 3. What type of companies will you be looking to invest in?
Yeah, I mean, look, in these difficult economic times, one thing remains certain is that space-based technologies are playing an increasingly important role in our global economy, and will continue to do so for decades to come. And that is why we are proud to say that we've just launched Fund 3 to continue investing at the intersection of space and tech. So there's a few areas that we really are looking at closely. One is in geospatial intelligence. So with the advent of SpaceX, we saw a proliferation of small satellites, lower cost sensors, distributed networks of sensors in orbit that are generating an unprecedented amount of new data. And we just recently unlocked access to all that data through cloud architectures and big tech getting involved. And so we're seeing applications being built on top of that in climate and insurtech, and several other areas, which we're excited about. We're also looking at GPS and augmenting the signal for more precision, which is enabling autonomy and countless other applications. And in satellite communications is becoming a strategic communications backbone. So we're really interested in how that's enabling remote operations, industrial, Internet of Things, and that sort of thing. So those are three key areas we're looking at.
All right, Chad, we appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.